Welcome to Write Now Workshop Podcast, where you can write a book and change the world. I'm your host, Kitty Bucholtz, and this is episode 175, Bringing Justice to Fiction, an interview with Lynette Eason, coming to you on Thursday, January 16th, 2020. Aw, today's January 16th. Do you know what that is? Let me tell you a story. On January 16th, 1988, 32 years ago, my husband and I went on our first date. It was interesting. I borrowed a skirt from my sister so that I would look really nice, even though it was January in northern Michigan. And I think we had 2 or 3 feet of snow on the ground, so almost a meter. And yet I was like, no, it's your first date with this guy I really want to go out with. So of course I'm going to wear a skirt. It's a wool skirt, not tights, just pantyhose. I was already thinking about how I was going to freeze. But I had these adorable little suede boots that I was like, I'm going to look awesome. But things went wrong from the beginning. He showed up early. I wasn't entirely ready, but I hurried because he seemed kind of annoyed that I wasn't ready early. So I was like, okay, no, I can be ready. And so we march off into the dark, cold January night because I was 19 and he was 20 and we didn't have a car. So we were going to walk to the movie theater. Not a bad problem, really. I mean, it's what we did all the time. We walked everywhere. But he wanted to cut through the park on a part of the park that didn't have a trail that had actually been shoveled. So we were walking through snowdrifts. And I have these little ankle-high suede boots and pantyhose. And I'm just thinking, what is he thinking? Does he know any girls? Does he know how this works? So I'm walking in his footsteps, hoping that at least I won't get too much snow down my boots. Oh my gosh, that was a very cold walk. And then we get to the convenience store where he was hurrying to get there so that he could buy a lottery ticket before 7 o'clock, which I was like, okay, that's all right. I am not annoyed with this. I wanted to go out with you. I will choose to be happy. So we go to the movie and we see a horror movie called The Hidden, which I enjoyed very much. And I was thinking, ooh, horror movie, this will be great. Every time something scary happens, I'll like jump and grab his arm. And then, it'll be like a way to get closer to each other. And yeah, I had the whole plan going and I did it several times and he didn't move at all. And I'm like, well, this is just stupid. I'm not doing this anymore. So I folded my arms and then I watched the entire rest of the movie with my arms folded. And he tried to take my hand once or twice. And I was like, no, pulling away. So then, okay, after that, we went to Sydney's, this really cute, adorable little restaurant that unfortunately got closed because apparently they didn't pay their taxes. But they were open at the time, and so we had a chocolate chip ice cream sundae. I think we shared one, or maybe we had 2 and realized that was too much, and then in the future we shared one. I don't remember that part. Anyway, it was absolutely delicious. I flirted. He acted like that was a stupid thing to do. And I was like, okay, I still really want to like you, so I'm just going to keep smiling. So the place where he and his brother were renting, it was on the way back to the college dorms where I was staying. So we stopped in there, get warmed up. Maybe everything will warm up. Maybe he will stop being so chilly. His place, of course, the first thing that we do is play with rats. Yes, he had pet rats. I tried really hard to pretend that I liked them, especially the way that they crawled up behind the back of my neck and wiggled their little noses in my hair. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is great. No, it's wonderful. Yeah, no, it's great. I was really trying hard to like this guy. But you know what? It didn't really warm up. And so after a while, I was thinking, you know what? I'm a modern 80s woman. This is 1988 after all. I'm 19 years old. I can do the mature, modern thing that women do. If men ask women out on dates and then pay for the dates and then seem to demand their kiss as payment at the end, I will do the same. I asked him out. I paid. I'm getting my kiss and I'm leaving. This was not a good night, kind of a disaster, and I'm done. once again, not really working out the way I thought it would. There was some plain hard to get or something. And then finally I was like, fine. Similar to like in the movie theater, as soon as I mentally crossed my arms and started thinking, all right, I'm going to just get my coat and go back to the dorms. Then he decided, oh, well, now that you're giving up trying, I will kiss you. It was a good kiss. It was a very nice kiss. It was a memorable kiss. So, yeah, I did go back to my dorms, but I also kept on seeing him. It was the worst date ever. I think it might be the worst day of our entire lives. But 32 years later, here we are, still together. And this is what led me to write romantic comedies. So there you go. Now you know. And I get to talk about it because he's gotten a little bit tired of me mentioning this for the last 31 years in a row. I'm pretty sure he thinks the story goes somewhat differently, but that is my version of it. So I'm sticking to it. And there's no reason not to just say, you know what, John? Thank you that now I write romantic comedies for a living because that is worth it. And he still is a really great kisser. So that is my story for today, January 16th. The very first thing that I do when I introduce our new guest, Lynette Eason, is ask her, how did you get started? So you've heard my story. Let's go listen to Lynette's story and find out how she ended up writing about good guys versus bad guys and murder and really terrible crimes and military and FBI and law enforcement. And it's a very, very good book that we're talking about. I read the whole thing. I loved the whole thing. You must go check out Collateral Damage. It's book 1 in a new series, which always makes it lovely because now you know that you haven't missed anything. And it is out now. So Collateral Damage by Lynette Eason. Go check it out. And here's the interview with Lynette.
Today's guest is Lynette Eason. Lynette is the best-selling author of Protecting Tanner Hollow, as well as The Blue Justice, Women of Justice, Deadly Reunions, Hidden Identity, and Elite Guardian series. She is the winner of 3 ACFW Carroll Awards, the Selah Award, and the Inspirational Reader's Choice Award, among others. She is a graduate of the University of South Carolina and has a master's degree in education from Converse College. She lives in South Carolina with her husband and 2 children. Welcome, Lynette.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yay. I was so excited that you had time because as we're talking, which will probably be last week as listeners are listening, your book just came out a couple days ago.
It did on January 7th, I think. Yeah, that's exciting.
Yay.
It's always fun to have a big birthday.
Yeah, exactly. So you've probably been doing a lot of marketing and promotion and that sort of thing this week.
Yeah, quite a bit, actually. I probably don't do as much, as I could, but I have to write too.
Right. We were just saying that we need to definitely stop talking after a little while because it's morning for you and it's time to start your writing day.
Yes, but this is fun too, so it's all good.
Oh, good. Well, hopefully we'll get you all excited about your stories and you'll be like, okay, I'm excited to say goodbye because I'm really full of energy now.
Yes, definitely.
Well, let's kind of start at the beginning for people who don't know you. Why don't you just kind of talk to us about how you got started and then kind of wind up through getting to this new book birthday for Collateral Damage.
Well, when I first started writing, it was probably about 20 years ago. And so my husband travels a lot with his job and was gone all the time. And so, as you can imagine, as a newlywed and with a small child, I was, kind of lonely. And at this point, most of my friends didn't have kids yet. I had the baby first. So I was at home while they were out doing stuff, whatever. But and so I always liked to write. And I kind of wanted to write a book. And so I decided, well, you know what, this might be a really good time to do that. And so I decided to talk to the voices in my head. No. And that's how I actually started writing. It was basically out of loneliness. And so from there, I didn't really start writing with the intention of getting published. But I think maybe it was kind of back there in the back of my head that it might be kind of fun to try. And so when I finished the story, I sent it off and got completely rejected. And well, and then that made me mad. And I was like, wait a minute, this is a good story. It was a totally horrible story. But so then I decided, well, I'm just going to see what I can do to I'm going to get published at least once just to show you I could do it. And then from there, it just kind of took off. I really liked it, and it turned into a career, which is really exciting. So wow. I think Collateral Damage is like book 61 or 62. I can't remember, but yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
I noticed you had a lot of books on your website, but I didn't realize that there was, 60 plus on there.
Yeah, I mean, that includes the novellas that I've written, and it includes the novellas. So, because I write for Love Inspired as well. So, not now. I'm straight Ravel at this point, but I had 30 books with them. So, yeah. So, anyway.
Oh my goodness.
I've done a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you were a young mom, wondering, how long it was going to be until your husband gets home. I mean, I've been married a long time. Yeah. And I'm still like, how long do I have until he gets home? Like, I kind of miss him. I'm kind of enjoying like doing my own thing right now. And so the voices in your head, were some of them talking about murder and mayhem and kidnapping? And
that sounds really scary, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, yes, actually. I grew up reading like Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys and Trixie Belden and I don't know, Sweet Valley High. And so, Agatha Christie was one of my favorite, and Alfred Hitchcock. And so, I've just always been drawn to the mystery, the puzzle, the justice versus, the good guys versus the bad guys. I don't know, kind of like the Bible,
Yeah.
But anyway, so I decided that if I was going to write something, I was going to write sorry, I have fuzz flying around. I was going to write what I like to read. And so I had no idea how to do that when I first started out, but I had read voraciously. So I kind of knew how a book was laid out. I kind of knew, and I was very good at grammar and punctuation, that kind of stuff. So that wasn't going to be an issue. So I don't know. I just started writing, and that's why I guess I was just drawn to that type of story. That's just the way God wired my brain. And so there I am.
Yeah. Well, I love it. I have to say, I've seen your name around for years. I didn't realize how many books it was, but your name was very, I've just lost the word, familiar to me.
Oh,
so,
thanks.
Yeah. And I probably have read some of your books, earlier on. But when I read Collateral Damage, I was thinking, no, I would have remembered an author who is this good and has got me so interested on every page. So I don't know, how you feel about your career. Like at what point you were like, I've really gotten good, but you are really good right now. And I really loved Collateral Damage. I'm so glad it's book 1 and not book 5 or something, so I can look forward to the rest of them.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's good to hear. That's good to know.
Yeah. Now, Collateral Damage happens to be, we'll kind of go back and forth among your books. You can tell us about your favorites or the ones that were hardest to write, but let's talk about Collateral Damage for a minute because it's, top of mind, just came out, brand new book, brand new series. Yay. So, I think that I know who the next books in the series are going to be about just because of something that happens near the beginning of book 1. I won't say anything in case you're not talking about that yet.
Oh, no, you can say. It's fine.
Okay.
I already have the title for that and everything. It's up on Amazon, so we're good.
Okay. All right. So for people who haven't read the book yet, this is not a spoiler. It happens very early on. So Lynette, are the 4 books about the 4 women who get together for lunch near the beginning?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much. It's Brooke, who is in Collateral Damage, Sarah, who is in Acceptable Risk, which is book 2, Heather Fontaine, the surgeon, who is in book 3, and that's the book I'm actually working on now. And book 4 is Ava. It's not Kat, the photographer, which I don't know. I've saved in that character for like a novella or something to continue the series a little bit after it actually ends. So those are the 4. And Caden, who is the FBI agent in book 1, he's in all 3 books. Which most of the characters are, but I have his point of view in all 3 books. And so he is actually the hero. He and Ava are the ones that get together in the end.
Oh, okay. Nice. Yeah. Oh, okay. These were really cool characters. And there's one other thing that I just have to kind of mention because it struck me, like I stopped reading because I was like, what? So I just have to ask you this. I have never read an inspirational book, meaning that, it's getting published in like the Christian sector or, something like that. It's generally meant to be at least slightly softer or sweeter or whatever. You actually use something I've only read in like Stephen King, Dean Koontz, Robert Ludlum. You say when someone gets shot, there was a red mist. And I went, oh my gosh, are you allowed to say that? Did they not know that you said that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's actually a military term for when somebody gets shot. They'll say, like I had in all of my research and writing, especially the beginning of the book, it's like it's a military term when I'm gonna turn him into a red mist or that kind of thing. And so it's kind of a play on words, but actually what happened. So
yeah.
yeah. No, it's funny because a lot of people think, I do write for a Christian publishing house. And a lot of people think because you write for a Christian publishing house, you have to keep it so sterile maybe, or I don't really know how to describe it. But no, I mean, you can get pretty gritty and you want it clean. I don't use language, but I also want it real, and I don't write fluff, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I try to keep it real, and I don't know. I really don't know how I'm trying to describe that, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, it is realistic. And also part of the story, a good part of Collateral Damage is set in Afghanistan with, the U.S. troops and the things that they're doing there. So it would be ridiculous if you didn't make it sound real.
Yes, thank you.
I think that I have some thoughts in my head because I started down the road for writing and publishing in the mid to late 90s. And at that point, like everything that was being published in the Christian sector, like even the things that I was writing, they're like, yeah, that's too much. I'm like, really? I didn't even say anything that my mother doesn't let me say. So it has changed a lot in the 20 years or so. But
and I think that's because the readers have given them feedback, or that the feedback they've given about a lot of the stories has been, look, we might want a clean read, but we want a realistic read. You know what I mean? So, and I think they're really allowing that to allowing you to do that. I mean, we all know where, what's going on in the world, hopefully. And while reading, a lot of people use reading as an escape. And some publishers say, well, we don't want to put this in because readers want to get away from that kind of stuff. I was like, well, yeah, maybe some, but I think the majority really appreciate having that escape in a realistic way. So anyway, that's my thoughts.
And the other thing that particularly, again, your book, Collateral Damage, what I was thinking near the end, when I found out what was going on, which Brooke doesn't know at the beginning, and so you find out when she does, and it's just absolutely horrifying. Definitely something that you would see on the news if the news, was on at 11, not 6. I don't know when kids could hear it. I mean, it's a really horrifying thing that happens. But the thing that I didn't mind and actually liked about it, which gave me the escape as well as the, excitement of reading a book with lots of action in it, was that the bad guys get it in the end. And I'm like, yeah, because in the news, you usually don't get to hear that the bad guys, got caught and viciously punished for the terrible things they've done.
Well, yes, of course. That's how we all want, we all want justice. I mean, there's a difference between justice and revenge. And I think ultimately, while, you may start out wanting revenge, ultimately, we just all want justice. We want to see justice done. We want to see the bad guys get it in the end. And those are the kind of books that I write, because that's how I feel about it. I was like, I want the bad guys to get it in the end.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be wonderful if everybody just, was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me change my ways and be a good guy from now on. But that doesn't happen. No, we're not going to go there. But so yeah. I really like writing those things. So, but it's funny that you say about how that it's such a horrifying thing. It is, and I actually had a reviewer say that the plot didn't seem that realistic, and she gave me really great a review, except for that one plot. She could not wrap her head around that kind of thing actually happened. And actually, my editor, when I first turned the book in, she was like, oh my goodness, this is so awful. This really happened. And I sent her about 10 links of media and journalists reporting on this and all this. And I'm like, yes, it happens. It happens every day, unfortunately. Maybe not exactly in the way that I wrote it, but it happens. And so it's a very realistic plot. It's a very tragic and sad plot. And I'm just thankful that there are people out there fighting that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, but anyway, yes.
Yeah.
But the thing is, and when I write my books, I want to, my first goal when I write a story is to make sure it's entertaining, it's page turning, it's people don't want to put the book down. They lose sleep over it. When somebody writes me and says, I lost sleep over your book last night, I'm like, yes, okay, good. I did my job. Okay. Yeah. And so, but I also want, if I can work something in there so that there's like a teaching moment or some kind of theme, or without beating somebody over the head. Obviously, I don't want that to be like I don't want it to be obvious either, but I want the reader to walk away still thinking about the story going, wow, is that really possible? And then maybe go and Google it and search it and go, wow, that's really possible. So yeah.
And this is kind of odd. Just as luck would have it, you were the second person from the Carolinas who I've interviewed who wrote a book for Revell based on real things. Lynn Blackburn. She's a good buddy of mine. She lives 5 minutes from me. We get together all the time. So when I interviewed her about the book that came out for her, I don't know, 6 or 7 months ago, I'm not sure exactly the timing. I think it was her last book. When I interviewed her about her book, she was saying, oh yeah, not only is it real, but I found out it happens down the road from where I live. And I'm like, what? The plot of her book. Yeah. It's crazy.
It is crazy. Yeah, I know. And the same thing in the story that I had with Call to Protect. I wrote about human trafficking, and I got the idea from the 6 o'clock news. That was when there's a sheriff in a county I used to live in, Spartanburg, Spartanburg, South Carolina, and he always does Operation Rolling Thunder. And so this is where the one weekend out of the year, you never know which weekend it's going to be, that all the cops, they're just out there in force on I-85, which is a major interstate around here. And they're out there, they're stopping people, they're doing traffic check. And they actually stopped a white cargo van that was carrying 9 people that were victims of human trafficking. This was like less than 20 minutes from my house. And they were there. It was a sex trafficking. And I think it was partly sex trafficking, part like work, forced labor type thing. And I think there were 9, I can't remember 9 or 12, I don't remember. But anyway, when I wrote the story, I looked up that that reporter, that whoever reported on it, was like a news, it was huge around here. And I looked that up and I read it to refresh my memory. And and so Call to Protect was taking place in the city. And, people are like, oh, that would never happen. Well, yeah, it does. Yeah. And you might be living next door to somebody who does it.
Yeah.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah, right? Oh, my goodness. Okay. So on the one hand, we know where the bad guys come from. Sadly, they come from the evening news.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you've got awesome bad guys or good guys. And when I say good guys, I mean good guys and good girls. So you've got military people and FBI. Tell us a little bit about either in Collateral Damage or altogether in all of your books. You've got like these big kind of alpha heroes, and some of them are women, which, a lot of times we get used to, particularly in romantic suspense, where the man maybe is a Navy SEAL and the woman is a reporter. But here you've got women right in the thick of things in the, I don't want to say war, because I'm not really sure that we're calling it a war. But anyway, in Afghanistan, the conflict. So tell us about like where you got your ideas for all the good guys.
Well, okay, so I started out, especially with, and I guess the very first series that I wrote, it turns out I really like to write strong female characters. Now, I'm not a feminist, but I feel like, women can do a lot, and they're very intelligent people, and, and they can be in law enforcement, and they can have really some intense jobs and do a good job with it. And so apparently that's been my I guess my bent. I don't know what I'm trying to say. And my publisher has really picked up on that. And so when I wrote the Elite Guardian series, they were very supportive in that. Oh yeah, we really want some strong female lead characters. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. I can do that. And then when this next series, the Blue Justice series, the same thing, strong female leads and, and heroes to, I guess, match and be compatible with that. And then I came with the next series, the Danger Never Sleeps series, which they, again, specifically requested we want 4 strong female characters. Okay. And so I guess that's kind of how I came about writing strong female characters. But I think that I balance it pretty well. They're strong, they're capable, they're intelligent, they're all these things, but they're also women, and they also have very much that heart. That's not, they don't man bash, they like men. It's like, and the men in turn recognize, they love these women for who they are, for their strengths and their weaknesses. They definitely have their weaknesses, as we all do. Doesn't matter how strong you are, you're going to be weak somewhere. And you're going to have faults, and you're going to, and that kind of thing. And so I just wanted to show, I love to show in just about every book I try to show that, you can be strong, you can be weak, but, and here's a guy who's going to love you for who you are and accept you for who you are, and vice versa. Guys don't have to be strong all the time. They can, the heroes, they have their weaknesses, they have their Achilles heel, so to speak. And, but together they can balance that out and be strong together and be weak together. One be strong, one be weak, whatever. But together, I don't know. I guess it's just, I'm trying to tell you how I try to balance the characters out without making them less than 3D, so to speak. I want 3D characters. We're all made up of we have our physical, we have our spiritual, we have our emotional. We're made up of those 3 things. And if you try to leave one of those out, then you have a really flat character. And I really think you need all 3 in order to have a really well-rounded, well-created character.
Yeah. And I thought you did such a great job in this book. And not only as a writer, but I mean, first I'm reading it as a reader and I'm thinking, oh, this is the way I like it. I like to have, like, I'm going through my office and cleaning my bookcases and putting my books on bookcases out of moving boxes. And I found a couple of books that I meant to read a long time ago, got them in a library sale, looked at the copyright date yesterday. And I think 2 of them were from the mid 90s. And I was reading the storyline going, yeah, so he kidnaps her and carjacks her, and then she falls in love with him. I don't really think I feel like reading that. Yeah. I mean, it's a good story in the 90s, but now I'm not really into that at all.
Yeah, no, me either.
So it was so great when Asher, right? That's the hero's name? Asher James. Asher James is the hero in Brooks.
Asher. I thought you were talking about Asher.
Oh,
I didn't hear Asher. Yeah, I thought you said Ashley.
Yeah, well, because I was like, is this the right name? I remembered his last name.
Yeah,
but
Asher.
He's got this great mix of, like, he's the kind of character that you actually would want to have lunch with. I mean, he's really strong, like super duper tough, military guy. But there's an attraction that isn't all about, wow, she's the prettiest girl I've ever seen, which is nice for it to not to be that all the time. Not that I don't think my husband is like awesomely gorgeous, but if that was the only compliment I ever gave him, it would be nice.
Yeah.
But I love that he sees in her something that he thinks will help him with this thing that he's struggling with. And I'm like, that is so cool.
Yeah, because he comes back with some PTSD and some issues that he really doesn't want to admit to, because, I mean, regardless of how we feel about men who have a weakness, so to speak, men don't like weakness in themselves. I can speak to that because I have a husband.
Yeah.
And and so she, when he finally caves and is like, okay, I'm gonna need some help here. I think it's neat that he turns to someone. He has to find someone who he knows understands, like, personally what he's going through, and because of their past experience, he knows he can trust her, and he knows that she will get what's in his head.
Yeah. The other thing that I liked about Brooke so much was that she didn't have to join. It's the Army, right? In this book?
Yeah, the Army. Yeah.
Army. She didn't have to join the Army. She could have just, been a civilian doing her life, but she decided to join the Army. And what you find out about her is that really no one wants to talk to her. And you're like, oh, I totally understand that. And you're like, I did this to help you people. Why won't anybody just talk to me? And yet then later, is it okay for me to say? Then later she finds out that people do respect her.
Yeah. That was, I was trying to figure that, because PTSD, I mean, it's on the back cover of the book what the issues are, so I'm not like trying to keep that a secret. From what I understand in my research and talking to different vets and people who are actually still serving, PTSD is different for everyone, and people deal with it differently. But for the most part, nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to. They just. It's part of a pride thing. It's partly a denial thing. Like, if I just deny it, it'll go away. And so, I mean, it's a mixture of things that make it really hard to talk about. And so I think that was probably pretty realistic, that she's over there. She's traveled over there gone to Afghanistan with a full intention of wanting to help and give these service members a safe place, a safe person to talk to. And they were like, they might listen, but she didn't realize they were listening. And she got really discouraged about that. She just got really, really discouraged about that.
Yeah, I like the like all the things that you didn't say, you know, because I could, like in my mind, I'm imagining, I'm like, oh yeah, but then, you know, like over the course of your life, or maybe, you know, like the way that I sometimes think of things, maybe when I get to heaven, you know, I die and I get to heaven, and then I'll be like, oh, I did actually make, you know, a positive impact on the world. But right now, it's not really feeling like it. You know, I like that she might have that kind of feeling.
Yeah, I think she really did. At some point, maybe not at the beginning, not when she was discouraged, but you know, later when she realized that, oh, okay, maybe I made more of a difference than I thought.
Yeah. And now I'm thinking about the careers of some of the other women who will be in your series, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I wonder, like, if we'll see that kind of vulnerability in the other women too, like the moments when it feels like they're not doing their job well, and then later they're like, oh, okay, people are appreciating, like, I did a good job in the end, or I don't know. I like it. I like the way you write, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. I hope I can continue to live up to those standards.
Yeah. Well, actually, let's segue a little bit into writing. My computer cord keeps coming. You know, I'm gonna stop playing with it. I've got 100% battery. I'll be fine. Okay, so let's segue into the writing part. I don't know. I'll pretty much just let you decide where you want to start. I'm really interested in the way that you, the research, or the way that you like stop to think about, how am I going to write this character to make them so beautifully three-dimensional and realistic, like it's somebody I really know. And I'm also really interested in all the different kinds of research that you have to do. You have so many different kinds of characters. It seems like you must have done a ton of research. So wherever you'd like to talk about, like, the writing part.
Okay. Well, when I start a book, I'm mostly an organic writer, like seat of the pants, just sit down, start writing the story. But I have found after so many books that my brain doesn't quite work as well as it used to when I was younger.
Yeah.
I mean, that's sad. No, and it's just, I find that I have to sit down. I have a character sketch. And I find that I have to sit down and kind of write out what I think my character is going to be like, what kind of personality he or she is going to have. Are they laid back? Are they high strung? Are they high maintenance? You know, that kind of thing. And then I kind of have to figure out their family, their background, and just try to make sure that when I'm writing the character, I'm being consistent. And if something happens, it's realistic that the character would act that way. And so that's kind of how I start writing. I just start down. I have two characters and the villain, and I just start doing a character sketch. And then I kind of have to think about, okay, and I may even know the first scene. I may even know exactly what's going to happen in the first scene. But if I don't know the characters well enough to know how they would react to that, then it's not going to come off as well done. And so, and sometimes as I'm going through the book and I'm writing, my characters are growing and changing, and you know, and I may and sometimes if I don't like the way the book is going, or the way the story is going, or the way the character is going, I may have to go back and change that first scene and redo it. Usually before the end of the story, I change the first scene at some way, somehow, not completely, but at least, 4 or 5 times. And so until I get it how I think it needs to be, to make sure the story that comes after that is going to be, make sure it's set up the story the right way. That first scene is really critical for me. And then, what was the last part of the question? My writing.
Part of it, characters, and how the things that you do think about or whatever to make them seem so realistic, but also the types of characters. It seems like there's a ton of research you'd have to do.
Oh, the research, that was it. Yeah. Yes, very much. I've been doing this now for 20 years, I guess, but I didn't get published till 2007. So I've been published, 13 years. And I'm getting pretty good with the law enforcement stuff. Like, I've done it so much and written so many law enforcement scenes and talked to so many cops and professionals. I have 2 FBI agents that read every story that I write and give me feedback. Yeah. They're phenomenal. I mean, I couldn't do it without them. And but the research side of it, especially this military books, when I have military, military is not my background. My dad was in the Air Force. My father-in-law was in the Army. You know, I have military in my family, but that's not my background. I haven't lived it day out and day out. And so I feel like I really need professionals to read what I'm writing and say, okay, no, this is completely wrong. This is how it would really work. And fortunately, I do have a couple of those in my resource packet. I can pull out and say, okay, hey, Vincent, read this. You're the military guy. Read this and tell me what you think. So that's really cool. But and then, when I'm researching, I had to do, in the beginning of Collateral Damage, there's that massive grave site. And I have a crime scene writers loop that anybody can join. If you write law enforcement, forensics, whatever, join crime scene writers. There are so many professionals on there that can give you great feedback. You just type in a question and say, hey, this is my scenario. How do I make this real? What would happen? I have a dead body. It's been in the ground for 6 months. What would it look like? And you will get like almost an immediate response. And if somebody on there doesn't know, then they will refer you to somebody who does. Like, for example, in that mass grave site, there was a chief medical examiner who is on this crime scene writers loop, and she's out in California, and she's like, well, let me put you in touch with the one who is in Greenville, South Carolina, because she's going to know the climate. She's going to know the procedures that you have in place in your area. And so she did. She put me in touch with the medical examiner here, one of them. Her name was Grace, and she let me ask her any questions, and she answered and basically gave me the procedures for excavating that grave site, and how long it would take, and where the bodies would go, and who would handle it, and all that kind of stuff. And it was, so resources, building your resources, networking, building those contacts are just, I can't even tell you, incredibly helpful and necessary to write a book that's going to come across as realistic and getting it right. And the thing is, it's really great because these professionals, they want you to get it right. If you're writing about their profession, they're passionate about their profession. That's why they do it. And they want you to get it right. So they will take the time to help you, which is phenomenal. And I really, really appreciate everybody who's really poured into my stories. There's one conference. It's in Nashville, Tennessee. It's called Killer Nashville. I know, and but it's all about thriller writing, mysteries, law enforcement, that kind of stuff. And they bring in Clay Stafford. Is the director of the conference. He and his wife, they do it together, and they bring in all these professionals, and they do panels, and they have all kinds of different topics. And between Killer Nashville, Writers Police Academy, who also sponsors MurderCon, I did that last year. So you go to all these conferences. I know the names of the conferences.
Those are great names.
Yeah, they're great. And then you have Thriller Fest in New York, and ACFW, which is American Christian Fiction Writers, is in St. Louis, Missouri this year. Blue Ridge Mountains Christian Writers Conference. But they bring in all of these professionals, and you can, they're so willing. They hand you their card and say, email me if you got a question about, my expertise in this area. And I was like, it was Killer Nashville 2 years ago. And, there was this one guy who he retired, but for 30 years he'd worked for the airline, TSA agent, and he works in Miami, the Miami-Dade, and he would he had developed this wild system of figuring out if there were drugs coming in on flights from Mexico. And he was he would go straight to these people, and they pull them off the planes, and they would search them. And he had slide after slide after slide, picture after picture of drugs and people that he'd arrested. And it was just crazy. And he's like, so if you ever need any help about how people run drugs, let me know, because I've seen it all. And so, it's just amazing the people that you meet at conferences. It's well worth the investment as a writer to go to these conferences. Yeah. I know it's expensive. It's not cheap. And it's, and when you're not published yet, but you're working toward publication, and funds are tight, it's hard to, imagine how is this really going to benefit me? But I promise you it does.
Wow. Okay. This is so interesting. I'm going to be hosting a writers conference in Malmö, Sweden this fall. And I'm thinking, okay, you know what? I wonder if I could get like somebody in forensics from Sweden and somebody in forensics from Denmark and talk about how it works in different countries and stuff like that.
Yeah, that would be phenomenal. Absolutely.
Fun.
Okay. Most people are willing. You just have to ask. Yeah.
That's so cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's good news for all of us, because, I don't know what part of the personality it is, but an awful lot of people, and I'm one of them, I think, yes, I'm going to ask, but then I never actually asked. I'm like, maybe it's too soon in the manuscript. Maybe I should wait until I'm better.
No. What you do is you reach out, you make that contact with that person. Like, for example, my Blue Justice series was set in Columbia, South Carolina. Now, I went to college in Columbia. I know the city fairly well, but that was years ago. And and so it has changed quite a bit since then. But they still, the law enforcement part is still divided into different regions. It's in 5 different regions: east, west, north, south, and one other one. Well, I didn't want to set corrupt cops in one of those regions, so I made my own region and I think I called it the Metro. I can't remember. It's been so long ago. I read a lot of books since then.
Yeah.
But I have a friend who goes to First Baptist Church in Columbia, and she's like, "Oh, we're good friends with one of the sheriffs here. If you ever need any information." I said, that would be fabulous. And so his name is Leon Lott, and she gave me his email. I emailed him. And so anytime I had a question about what would happen in Columbia in a law enforcement situation, he fired back and gave me an answer. And I was able to make it, realistic to that area because of his willingness to answer questions. So most people really, they're just really great about doing that kind of stuff, especially through email.
Yeah.
Email's easy, and you answer it when you have time.
Yeah.
So I would say, don't wait. Go ahead and find somebody to ask, and then say, hey, do you mind if I email you over the course of the story? That way you don't have 50 million questions for them at one time, and it doesn't take them nearly as much time to send off, a paragraph rather than go through and find all your questions.
Right. That's a good point. That's an excellent tip. I like that.
Yeah.
Because part of me sometimes is thinking, you know what, I'll put all my questions in one email so that it's not necessarily for this kind of conversation, but some other thing. I think, I should put everything in one email so they don't lose it. But this is a much better idea for this sort of question. So when you are asking somebody to read, the section that pertains to their job, have you found that there is a certain kind of basically, so let's just call them beta readers, even though it's not, they're probably not reading the whole book. Yeah.
The concept. Yeah.
Yeah. So have you found that there's anyone who they're really good at this, but not really good at reading and responding the way that you need feedback from not your question, but from actually having read the book? Or is everybody equally?
Yeah. No, there's been a couple who've said, "Oh, I'll read it," and then I don't ever hear anything back. Not many, but a couple. And so it's fine. I get it. People are busy.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of time and energy and to sit down and read a manuscript, you know. And so I have found that sometimes it works better for the other individual and not so overwhelming if you will take chunks of your manuscript and say, okay, here is where I have this scene. Do you mind reading this scene? And just making sure that I have portrayed my police officer correctly, or like I've written the procedural correctly, and give me some feedback on that. And I found that sometimes is a lot better for some people. Now, like I said, my 2 FBI agents, they're retired. They actually still work. And they retired sense of the word. Yeah, and they still offer their expertise. So, but anyway, so when they both read, like I said, they both read every manuscript. Now, it may not be quite as timely as I might need it to be.
Yeah.
But and yet it is. It may not be right before I turn the first draft, not the first draft, but the first time I turn the book in, before a bunch of edits. But by the time I get the book back from my copy editor, they have those edits back to me, or they have their suggestion. I call them edits because I'm usually it's usually like another round of edits. But
yeah.
So those two, I know, are going to read the full manuscript. And then Lynn Blackburn and I, we read each other's books a lot. And give each other feedback. Yeah, we are critique partners, brainstorming partners, writing partners. We get together and do 15-minute sprints and see if we can beat each other how many words we can get written in 15 minutes. You know, that kind of thing. We found that we're much more productive that way. So yeah, so people are just, you just gotta ask, and if they say no, okay,
yeah,
move on to somebody else. It's okay. I don't ever take offense when somebody says, I just don't have time.
Yeah,
I get it. I have to say that myself. I just don't have time. I have 3 manuscripts sitting on my email box that I would love to read for people that are looking to get published, and I know they're probably very good. It's just I have to keep up with my own stuff, and
right.
I mean, yeah, and but then there'll be times where I have kind of more time, and that's when I'll go and I'll say, okay, I can read now. Do you still need me to read? And then I'll do it. So
yeah.
Okay, so to wrap up with a few bullet points for listeners, don't be afraid to ask someone in their profession if they would read a section, and just find out if they say yes, great. If they say no, you can find someone else to ask. Don't be afraid to ask.
Yes, yeah. Okay. And there are plenty of people ask at these conferences.
Okay. And plus, when you're in between conferences, there are places where you can find these people online, different groups. Yeah. I know that there's a group that has something to do with, I think the word expert is in the group somewhere, and it's all kinds of experts in all sorts of fields. Yeah. And I, of course, can't think of what it's called. Haven't used it, but I've heard other people talk about it, writers talk about it.
Yeah.
Plus, always, you didn't mention this one, but when I was writing a scene that had, an ambulance coming and EMTs working on people and then going to the hospital, I was like, I'm totally making this up. I've never been in an ambulance. So I just went on Facebook and I said, has anybody here ever driven an ambulance, been an EMT, had an emergency, family situation themselves? And then all of a sudden, like you said, one person refers me to someone else, and I just needed them to read this one scene, and people gave me feedback, and then I changed it, and I was like, oh, this is great. I feel a lot more confident than.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It does wonderful things for your confidence. Yes.
Yeah. And then for, it seems like pretty much a lot of your advice is pretty much just get into it, ask for help. When somebody's too busy, maybe you find out somebody, I kind of was reading between the lines with this. You tell me if this is not what you meant. If somebody maybe isn't the best beta reader, even though they're really good at the facts of their job, maybe that you won't ask them to beta read the next one, but you'll still ask them questions that they can help you with for the facts. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the rest of your writing seems to be just, your personality, doing it an organic way, starting with the main two characters and the villain. Who was I talking to? I think it was Patricia Bradley. I loved that she said she didn't actually know who the villain was a lot of times. She would just write a scene that was from his or her point of view, and she enjoyed the idea that she was going to figure it out as she went along as well. So that was fun.
Yeah. Sometimes the villain changes. Like I've done this a couple of times. Like I'll start out thinking I know who the villain is. I'm like, this person is not the villain. They're the red herring. And then the real villain is so-and-so. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. That happens. It happens.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, that's a good
really
tip
bad
too.
When characters turn up dead, but then you're like, wait a minute, how'd that happen? Yeah.
This person can't be the villain if they're dead.
I know, right?
Awesome. Okay, these are great tips. I love helping everyone to find something because even if you're not writing a suspense, like one of your other great tips was deciding who the main characters are and getting to know them well enough to know how they're going to react as you start writing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's key. If I find myself stuck, like not knowing what's going to happen next or what to write next, I find that if I'll go back to my character development, it's usually something I've missed in developing that character. And I can flesh her out or him out a little better. And then I'm like, oh, I know where I need to go with this. Yeah.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
Lynette, this is so much fun. I feel like we've only been talking for 20 minutes, but I look at the clock. I'm like, oh no, I promised I would let you go so you can get back to writing.
I am. I'm going really fast.
Yeah. So let's let everybody know. Tell us again the new book title and series name, and also just where can people find you and your books?
Okay. Well, Collateral Damage in the Danger Never Sleeps series is book 1. And you can find me online at my website, LynetteEason.com. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'm not on Instagram that much, so if you leave me a message on there, it might be 2 months before I see it. But Facebook and my my website with the contact me form is probably the best way to get in touch with me. So yeah, that's where I am.
Awesome. You have been so helpful and interesting. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you for having me. This has been really fun. I appreciate it.